Welcome back once again to Urban X-Files. My name is Keith and today is another spooky ghost story. Today's story was relayed to me by an old friend of mine. Many years ago, I used to have a taxi. I used to use it to supplement my income, and it first started just before I had my firstborn. So I did come across quite a few people's spooky stories over the years. In this case, it was relayed to me by my friend Jamie. It was winter around 2005, I think it was, thereabouts anyway. So it was just another weekend on the taxis, and the weekend, Friday, Saturday, even Sundays being the best time to work, it's the most money. So I was chilling with a friend of mine and he was telling me this story as he was waiting for his fare to come through on the radio. Now, we worked for a private hire company called Delta, which is pretty big in Liverpool. Thankfully, I don't do that job no more. It's one of the worst jobs you could ever do. It's a very lonely job, believe it or not. Anyway, he was telling me some strange stories that he'd come across over the years, and this one seemed to stick in my mind. So, for quite a few years, we shared quite a few experiences during our time on the cabs. Now, Jamie began telling me about this fare he got. He seen this tall man come over to him. He had a dark coat, and he come over. He was waiting by Central Station in Liverpool, and Jamie's car was waiting opposite Burger King, just by Bold Street in Liverpool city centre. And as the man crossed Skellon Street to come close to his car, the man in the black coat walked up and asked Jamie if the car was for him. It was a Mr. Smith. Jamie said to himself that it looked as if he seemed to float towards the guy's car rather than walk. Now, he was muttering to himself, and although this, I suppose, can be quite an alarming thing, but when you've worked on the taxis, you see so many strange people. You have no idea how strange people are out there. So this muttering guy headed over to Jamie, and so he unlocked the doors, let him into the taxi, and this guy looked middle-aged. As he said to himself, sorry mate, what was that? Jamie asked him, thinking that the guy was talking to Jamie, because obviously telling him where his fare was and stuff, where his fare was to go. So the man waved his hand and dismissed Jamie's question, and then Jamie was like, oh great, another whack job. So as he dismissed Jamie, he said, right, fine, and he said to him, where to, mate? And Jamie had to repeat himself again, because the guy seemed to be very away with it, he was really distracted. So this guy kept mumbling to himself, and Jamie muttered under his breath, you'll get locked up for talking to yourself. And the other passenger, he didn't hear Jamie's hushed insult, thankfully. So Jamie says, where to, brother? And the man looked up, closed his eyes for a moment, and then in a gruffled voice said, Norris Green. Yes, that's it, Norris Green, driver. Take us to Norris Green. Nogsy. What part of Nogsy, mate? And Nogsy is an abbreviated term for Norris Green for people who live in Liverpool. So he asked, I'll tell you soon, just head towards Norris Green. And that was the passenger's strange reply. And Jamie wondered if the guy even knew what day it was, just how distracted this guy was. And I stress again, this is not an abnormal thing to come across when you're working on the taxi. So he said, Jamie just wondered if the guy even knew what day it was. All he was concerned about is that he had a fare and the guy was going to pay. So So anyway, he says, what do you mean? He just said, I'll tell you soon. Well, what's the address? Jamie turned around in his chair and said, as he stared at the man, and this strange, creepy man scowled back at him as if he'd said something awful to him. So he's like, look, driver, I don't expect you to understand what I'm about to tell you. He's like, driver interrupted, my name's Jamie, and why wouldn't I understand? Try me, because his patience was beginning to wear thin. So, as over the past few months, Jamie had had a few fares run off without paying, and let me tell you, it's one of the most irritating things when scum do that. So, very well, the man leaned forward and was ready to explain, and he's like, I've just come from my train in Chester. I'm a medium, and I was in the middle of a circle, and this is the term he used when he was holding seances and stuff. And he said this seance was interrupted by a spirit with some important information. The information that was said to him seemed vague and incomplete. But my spirit guide, Sam, is helping out now. Jamie gave him a blank look and uttered, oh, is that the same Sam as that most haunted guy, Derek Acora or something? He said with a chuckle. And the man continued, my name's Jack. And I swear every word that comes out of my mouth is true. My guide is sitting next to me now, and this is a matter of life and death. Oh, okay then. So, Jamie seen that Jack had some sincerity in his voice, and he gave him the benefit of the doubt. I was like, right, okay. So it began to make Jamie think that the guy was just really distressed and he wasn't some nut job that taxi drivers pick up throughout the days. And Jamie had been bored anyway. It was a slow shift. And like I said before, taxi driver, although you've got people in and out the car throughout the day, the night, wherever it is, it's actually a really lonely job. I found it, as I said, I'd done it for a few years. It was good, I did enjoy it to a point, but it is a very, very lonely and stressful job. You are sat on your own majority of the day, despite people coming in and out, and you are left alone with your thoughts. And so anyone who's a taxi driver or who has ever been a taxi driver and listens to this story, they'll know exactly what I mean when I say that. He thought, well, let's just see where it goes. Okie doke, I'll drive towards Norris Green, and when I get closer... Oh, his name is Sam, by the way, said the medium. It's not the same Sam as Derek Acora. He's a bit faint tonight. He says Norris Green, and he's showing me a name with the word Ash in it. It's a street in Norris Green. Could be Ashover or Ashgrove, Jamie said. It's a bit vague, and the guy said, it's a bit vague, I know, but Sam's never been wrong. Well, Ashover's road is in Dovey, Jamie said, looking in his rearview mirror. That's it, Monarch. And I even have the number on the door, he said with a smile. A lady's life may depend on this. It's a long story, but to cut it short, the lady is an old friend of mine, said Jack. And the spirit of her dead relative is the one who interrupted my seance when he made contact with me in that circle to say that this particular woman's life is in grave danger. And a man with a blade is stalking her. He was like, oh crap, as he realised that he hadn't reset the meter, which, let me tell you, is one of the most irritating things. You have to guesstimate it then, like with private hire and like Delta, how it worked for us. We didn't have a meter as such. We used to have to reset the mileage so that it went on miles. Anyway, a man with a blade, he's stalking her. Oh shoot, said the medium. Seemed to be in a trance with his hands together as though he was praying, and his eyes were tightly closed together, and he didn't say a word for 5 minutes or so. So Jamie put his foot to the floor, and he made it to that address in record time. Here we go, mate. And Jack scanned the numbers of the doors until he came to the house that Sam had showed him in the dream. So Jack got out of the car and he said to Jamie, he said, "Hang on, mate, let me just go and knock, and I'll be back in a minute." So anyway, Jack gets out and he goes over to the door, knocked on the door, and he could hear someone moving behind the door, and he could see something through the keyhole. It was they see the shadows moving. Like, "Margie, it's me, Jack," said the medium, and the chain was being undone. So the door opened and there was Margie, and he'd not seen her for years, and she stood there staring at him in surprise, with a smile as she realised it was Jack from all those years ago. And she said, taking a step back, she happily invited him in. So Jack turned and shouted to my mate Jamie and said, "It won't be a minute, mate." So Jamie gave him the thumbs up and sat there waiting. So he sat there thinking about this strange tale that had just been told to him. And did he believe it? He wasn't sure what to make of it. So what happened then? There was an instant tapping on the window of his window. So Jamie rolled his window down and he was startled to see this random bloke stood there. And his head was shaved, and his eyes, he said, had this vacant stare, like staring into the eye of a shark. He was like, "Who is that bloke who's just gone into that house?" And he's like, "No idea, mate. Why?" "Well, I'm her husband, you see, and I am sick of her bringing fellas back to the house. It's gotta stop." And he was like, Jamie was beginning to think, "Oh shit, what's going on here?" Excuse me language. And what happened next is he seen this guy with the shaven head pull out a knife. So as the man moved off the car and went towards the door, Jamie pressed the panic button on his radio. So anyone who's a taxi driver, you'll know that there's a panic button in your car, so that if there's ever any issues, it alerts all the drivers in the surrounding area to drop everything, providing they haven't got a fare in, to head to this scene to give backup. And also it automatically turns the radio on where you get your jobs through and your screen and stuff, and it starts recording inside the cab. So he got them they called the police, and it literally must have been minutes, he said, that the police were on the scene. And and as this strange guy seen the police arrive, he legged it, he ran off, but he was soon caught. Thankfully, they caught him running away anyway. He dropped the blade, they picked it up and caught the man. Now, it turned out that Jack's supernatural tip-off had been bang on the money. For months, Margie had been stalked by this man who'd convinced himself that he was actually married to Margie. And it turns out this stalker guy had a history of being obsessed with women, but had only ever been cautioned. There'd been no official, he hadn't had any restraining orders or sentences or whatever. So Margie was taken back how Jack randomly turned up at a door. They'd lost touch and hadn't spoke for well over 10 years, I think he said it was. And so anyway, after the police had gone and stuff like that, or whatever happened, then he come over and Jack had said to Jimmy, "Yeah, this is the money for the fare. Thanks very much. I'm going to stay with Margie, make sure she's okay. And thanks very much for listening and bearing with me." So off he went, and the day ended, and that was that. Now, a little time afterwards, Jamie had gone into town with his husband. There was his birthday celebration or something. It was something like that anyway. And he was sat in a restaurant, and as he was just glancing up and they were talking, who's to walk in that very same restaurant was Jack and Margie. So they walked in and they were escorted to a table not too far away from where Jamie and his husband was sat. So Jack Jack had spotted Jamie and come over to say hi and different things like that, and it turns out like he'd rekindled his relationship with Margie and they were happy and whatnot, and he just wanted to thank him again. So they made friends, exchanged numbers, and they kept in touch from there. Now, Jack had gone back to sit with Margie, and just as Jamie and his husband were about to leave, they were packing up, got the bill, paid the stuff, putting the coats on, when Jack come over to his new friend and said, just to let you know, Sam had told me there's going to be a sound of pitter-patting feet coming soon. Now, no way, Jamie said, because him and his husband had struggled for years. They were looking to adopt, they had various things, and it just never worked out. So what happened then is they said goodbyes and they went on. Now, the odd thing is, a few months later, Jamie and his husband got a call for the adoption agency. A newborn baby had been born and they'd been put up for adoption, and Jamie and his husband had been recommended to be ideal parents to bring up this newborn baby. Now, just as a coincidence and as it would happen, Margie worked, I don't know whether she was part of social services or she worked for the adoption agency or wherever it was. She'd found two perfect parents that would fit this newborn baby's life. And this little bundle of joy was Jamie and his husband had adopted this lovely little baby. Now, they called it Stanley, little boy called Stanley. Now, what I should have said before is that the ghost of Margie's recently, or whenever it was departed, family member turned out to be Margie's granddad. And I should also mention Margie's granddad was also called Stanley. So there we have the end of the story. So Jamie and his husband finally had their own child. It was a lovely little boy called Stanley. So yeah, I think stories like this there's definitely some strange forces at work in you know, on the next plane of life, whether it's afterlife, whether we reincarnate, whether it's ghosts, whatever. I think sometimes it's more than just a coincidence when things like this happen. So if any of you guys have ever experienced anything like this, or something creepy, or something strange, or something you want to share, please do get in touch. And I hope you enjoyed today's story. And if you're feeling generous, smash the like button, share and subscribe if you're not already done so. So for now, thank you for watching, take care, all the very best, and see you in the next video. Peace.